Hi, everyone. In the last hour, we have been experiencing a thunderstorm with real thunder, hard rain. There was some hail. It might as well have been around the 4th of July or August when the monsoon typically comes to Albuquerque. But this is March 11th. And like so much now on the planet, everything seems turned upside down and backwards and unpredictable, and as if each second of each minute of each hour now is unknown. I don't think I have ever experienced time seeming so jumbled. The other day I thought it's almost as if something reached down and picked up this particular timeline of Earth and humans and creatures and water at a moment where, for reasons unknown, the timeline was just exploded, and that we are living second by second, day by day, now almost as if time itself is weaving in front of us without us really having a clue what's going to happen next. And on this strange journey of Earth with me is dear Chocolate. He always is a solid pal. He loves to come, and if I'm doing anything, he wants to put his paw on it, like, I see what you're doing, and I want to grab it too. I want to push those buttons too. He is so intelligent, and he's so loving. And his brother Fluffy, who was just out there a few yards away up until just a few minutes, seems to always know we're going to get started, and Fluffy turns it into a game. Like, I'll run downstairs and which one of you will follow me? Well, tonight, Chocolate stayed and is in my lap as a piece of life that I love and want to survive like all of you, and that my heart feels an ache about what is happening on this planet now with the COVID-19, strange, unexpected, like something creeping around on the planet that can hurt us. And I'm going to put this beautiful life form down so I can talk to you a little bit more about some of the coronavirus pieces that I have found in the last couple of days that I think is important to share. And then I have a fascinating abduction tale story that ties into work that goes in a circle for me 30 years, and now something new has happened in it. So I'm going to put you down. You go find Fluffy and play. I love you. Today, on this March 11th, the UN's World Health Organization officially declared that the COVID-19 deadly coronavirus is now a world pandemic, increasing in new cases and deaths in 122 countries and territories out of 194 total. Also, this afternoon, the United States reported 1,109 new cases and 31 deaths in 41 states and Washington, D.C. The only states now without confirmed and reported coronavirus cases are Alaska, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, Alabama, Mississippi, West Virginia, and Maine. Yesterday, on March 10th, 2020, the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, ordered National Guard to create a containment area around the coronavirus hotspot of New Rochelle, where a synagogue accounts for 108 of New York State's 173 confirmed coronavirus cases. The Young Israel synagogue now sits at the center of a circle that extends for a mile radius, blocking any large public gathering in the area and reducing traffic in and out. Also, yesterday, as the World Health Organization announced that we are officially in a world pandemic, Dr. Michael Osterholm, director of the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, was on the Joe Rogan radio broadcast to talk about this question: how serious is the coronavirus?
This is going to be at least 10 to 15 times worse than the worst seasonal flu year we see. We conservatively estimate that this could require 48 million hospitalizations, 96 million cases actually occurring, over 480,000 deaths that can occur over the next 3 to 7 months with this situation. So this is not one that to take lightly.
As we begin to hear firsthand testimonies from people who have been infected with COVID-19 and recovered, there is a pattern that is emerging. The first symptoms can be mild, like a fever and a runny nose. And then comes body aches and GI distress with bad headaches. And then some people think they're recovering. And out of the blue, their lungs are attacked with pneumonia. That's how they end up in hospitals. That can be the worst part of COVID-19 infections for both older people and younger 20s and 30s, like a young man named Connor Reed, recently interviewed by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and distributed for public information.
This particular virus, it happens in different stages, as you said. You get better before you get worse. So in my case, the first stage was I had the cold. Just a common cold. My nose was stuffy. I had ear problems, sinus problems, that sort of thing. I was getting better, and that's when I got hit with the flu. Now, I've had the flu half a dozen times, and this was probably the worst I've felt with that. It really was quite bad. It wasn't life-threatening, but I did feel terrible. With the flu, I was stuck in bed. I had a headache. I just generally feeling unwell. I was getting better from the flu, and that's when I got hit with pneumonia. Now, the pneumonia, I've never had that before, so that was quite serious for me, and that's the point I went to hospital.
TV and web news is reporting really around the clock now, 24/7, about this rapidly spreading pandemic of COVID-19. But one positive sign is that China's new cases and new death counts have been leveling off a bit after rising straight up since December. China's leveling off has come after 3 months of a quarantine nightmare. And if that same timeline happens or applies in the United States, then hopefully by June, we might have we might hit that same kind of crest where the cases and the deaths begin to at least level off from rising as rapidly as they are now. Well, then the question will be, in the colder months of fall and winter, like the seasonal flu, will this COVID-19 return again? Some virologists think that this is a possibility, which is why humans cannot relax until there is a tried and true new vaccine for COVID-19. Meanwhile, my offices have been getting and growing piles of letters from you, and I'm getting lots of space news and more high strangeness reports. And this past week, I had an extraordinary phone interview with one of the human experiencers in my third book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, High Strangeness. This book was published in 1998, and I know firsthand how many valuable military intelligence and human abduction testimonies are in it. And the recent phone call came from one of half a dozen people featured in this volume 2 who contacted me in the 1990 to 1993 time period, each with similar descriptions of seeing all kinds of humanoid bodies preserved in thousands of tubes of light in a vast room, city blocks long. And the overseers of these tubes, in which there's light at the top and the bottom, preserving the bodies inside were non-humans that ranged from tall, green, 8-foot tall praying mantis type insects to 7 to 8 feet tall, blonde-haired, very white-skinned humanoids with pale blue cat eyes, or gold cat eyes that have thin, vertical, dark pupils in tall humanoids who have long black hair, or 8-foot tall, very thin humanoids with very large beaked noses wearing tight skull caps that have curves down on the forehead, all working together with gray-skinned, large-headed, big black-eyed beings that ranged from 3 feet to 5 feet tall. And you can find all those experiences and the illustrations in my Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, High Strangeness. And the chapter is called Body Containers and Souls of Light. And what I'm going to share with you tonight comes from the abductee in this book called Wana Lawson, not her real name. But now in March of 2020, she has asked me to use her real name and her real background for the first time on public record, because she is now 82 years old in a nursing home in California, and she does not think that her human life on this planet has much time left. Her real name is Arrawana Allen, born August 16, 1937 in New Jersey. Twice divorced, with a 20-year-old daughter and 2 other young children, Arowana worked in the Atlantic City Office of Affirmative Action and the Department of Health and Human Services for 30 years. She has always wanted and liked to help people, and she loved working in the city government, helping people in New Jersey. She has also long known that there are other intelligences from somewhere else in this universe that interact with Earth Homo sapien, including herself and her family. But when Arowana originally talked to me beginning in 1992 for my 2-volume book, she felt that she had to remain anonymous in order to maintain her Atlantic City government work. Now has come a revelation, only 9 weeks ago at the end of December 2019, that brings us full circle back to the alien resurrection technology from our work 28 years ago. It all started for Arowana and her family on Thanksgiving week, 1983. She and her oldest daughter and son-in-law and her other children had driven in 2 cars to be with relatives in Louisville, Kentucky for that holiday. On their November 27th, 1983 return to Atlantic City via the Pennsylvania Turnpike, they had stopped both cars for gas several miles west of Harrisburg. Back in the cars headed east toward New Jersey, a strange light appeared in the sky that Arowana explained to her daughter, "I think that's foxfire." The next thing that they all knew was they were in another car rest area, but now it was in New Jersey, on the New Jersey Turnpike, many miles east. And the gas gauge in each of the 2 cars was full. They all had missing time, which haunted Arowana. She wanted to remember what happened after the foxfire light in the sky back in Pennsylvania. And that led her to do hypnosis and eventually recorded in-depth discussions with me, and she provided me illustrations. Hypnosis revealed that after stopping for gas west of Harrisburg, both cars ended up inside a very large craft that glowed with a pinkish red color on the interior. Small gray beings got all the family out of both cars, and a tall male humanoid with a very large beaked nose and skull cap greeted them. Everyone was separated, and Arowana recalled being taken into a bright room that reminded her of a hospital room, where she was put on an exam table. And then Arowana was in front of, quote, as she describes, a tall American Indian type. His skin was gray, pale, no pigmentation whatsoever, pearlescent, translucent. He had high cheekbones, a hooked nose, black hair that was longer than normal. His eyes were wide-set, solid black eyes, but those were shields of some kind, she saw. Later on, he took them off, and Arowana could see gold eyes like a cat's underneath. He and the other tall beings wore a patch on their leotard uniforms of two overlapping triangles in a circle. The triangles were open at each end, which signified, Arowana heard telepathically, quote, the merging of two worlds. He never explained to Arowana which worlds or why. The tall male put his hand on short Arawana's shoulder, and she felt immediate calm along with a sense of deep and close intimacy with him, as if he were her mate. He took Arowana to a huge room, city blocks long, she said, where walls were lined with thousands of clear cylinder-shaped tubes, about 2 feet wide and 8 feet tall, in which light shone from the top and the bottom, highlighting a great variety of humanoid bodies inside each tube. He took Arowana in front of one particular tube filled with an 8-foot-tall body of a female with black, wavy hair and almond-shaped eyes that was not human. The skin, again, pearlescent, almost glowing, white-gray skin like his. And the tall male being, also with long black hair, telepathically transferred thought words into Arawana's mind. This is your body. Arowana had not seen those very tall, white-skinned, black-haired, cat-eyed beings since her family's abduction on November 27th of 1983, until 3 months ago. Arowana Allen.
And I had not been taking my water pills due to the fact that I had a very...
southeast of Los Angeles, where she still tries every day to help her fellow retirees. And every day she is supposed to take diuretic medicine to flush her body of excess water. She did not know how bad the consequence could be if she skipped her medicine until December 9th, 2019, at 11:30 p.m. Pacific in a Salton Sea Region nursing home.
And I had not been taking my water pills due to the fact that I had a very busy schedule and didn't want to have to urinate very often, which is what would happen if I had taken those water pills. So I didn't take the water pills, not knowing that the result of not taking the pills would result in my lungs filling up with water, prohibiting me from breathing. I was in my reclining chair, and all of a sudden I found it very hard to breathe. I managed to stand up because I knew I had to get help. And it was just extremely hard to move. But I forced myself to pull the string for help. When I sat back down in the chair, I stopped breathing. And I knew I was dying. And I actually died. For a moment, it was just completely black and dark. And then the next thing I know, I was surrounded by bright light. And it was my mind with no body in this light. And the next thing I know, I saw the tube. And there was a body in the tube, a woman's body. And she was standing with her head slightly bent, slumped. And I knew I had seen that body before. I knew that I had occupied that body before. As a matter of fact, I knew it was my body. And it was waiting for me to enter it.
Why do you think you ended up in front of the tube with the tall female?
The only thing I could think of is that I was going home. I was going back to who I originally was. That's exactly what will happen to me. I will go back to who I originally was.
So what brought you back?
Electric shock treatment. I don't know, whatever they did to bring me back. But just before I could enter it, all of a sudden I was snapped back into the darkness. And then the next thing I knew, I woke up in the hospital. And I had been in a coma for maybe a day or so. And here I was alive again.
How did you get in front of her in the tube?
When I found myself in the blackness and realized all I had was my thinking mind, there was no body. It was just my mind. For lack of a better word, the soul. And I was only there for a fraction of a second. I wasn't there long. And then I found myself in this bright light. Then within a second, there was the body in the tube.
Explain why the body in the tube is so significant for you.
When my family and I were abducted, the experience that you wrote about in your book, Glimpses of Other Realities, High Strangeness, I saw a room full of bodies in a tube, a very large room. And a male alien took me to one particular tube. And he told me it was my body and asked if I wanted to enter it. And I did enter it. So I was familiar with that tube. I was familiar with that body.
Why were you in the body that you have now for this life?
To live the life of a human being a human is a wonderful thing. I love being me.
Right. Why do you think that you would ever have left the tall whites, to come to Earth and have a life in a smaller black body?
Well, Linda, I think that what's going on is an evaluation of humanity. I know my daughter once asked me, Mom, if you had to decide if humanity should continue to exist, what would you say? And I paused for a second and I looked at her and I said, I'd say that they should continue to exist. And she said, why? And I had to tell her, if you wanted to see humanity at its very best, you create a catastrophe. During a catastrophe, people that don't even know each other will risk their lives and even die trying to save someone else. And right now, we've had so many during my lifetime. I've gotten to experience man at his very best. And I don't think humanity has anything to worry about. I think they'll be around a long time.
And it might relate to the part of us that cycles in and out of containers, perhaps for infinity, that we call the soul.
Yes.
Even if we don't have all the answers about the recycling of souls in and out of matter bodies, or what exactly the relationship is between other intelligences and us, the evolving humanoid primates on Earth, it's also worth remembering in this stressful time of the COVID-19 coronavirus that is threatening human lives around the world, that there was a communication from another extraterrestrial biological entity called EBA. He allegedly lived at Los Alamos Labs in New Mexico from 1949 to June 18, 1952, when reports say that he died of unknown causes. I have been told that each day his companion was an Air Force captain who could receive and send telepathic thoughts better than most people. And that captain allegedly sat with EBA in front of a motion picture camera to do questions and answers in which the captain did all the verbal talking on camera for both his questions and the EBA's answers. One of the questions was, is reincarnation, the recycling of souls in and out of container bodies, actually happening in this universe? The gray EBA answered telepathically, reincarnation, the recycling of souls, is the machinery of this universe. I hope that some of this tonight you will keep in some part of your mind to always go to, no matter what happens in the future. Because I do feel strongly that there is the insight of fundamental truths about this particular universe and how the matter in this universe is animated by energy and systems, some in conflict, and others that I think are in the category of souls, in our case, strong souls, who have been around and around and around. And the very fact that we are in this universe means we are struggling to always be moving toward the light, or we wouldn't be here. And that if something like this terrible COVID-19, as SARS was and MERS was and the swine flu and Ebola and pandemics on this planet throughout history, in a strange way, at this time where it feels like the whole timeline is fractured or suspended or being pushed or shoved, maybe it's to help remind us that we're on a planet in a universe of matter, and very little seems to be predictable, even those that try to time travel, and that there is something about the unpredictability that challenges the ability of the soul to navigate, and that maybe this is one of those times. I'm praying that by July and the heat, that the COVID-19 will hopefully be at least subsiding, and then pray that the brilliant scientists working on this so desperately now can come up with a vaccine. I know they said a year. We need a vaccine against this. In the meantime, if coming together on Wednesday nights is something we can all keep doing, and even more and more people can join, because it's unsafe now to be out in crowds anywhere, not in a movie theater, not anywhere is it safe. We can communicate, we can show videos, we can talk with each other at Earthfiles, and just like right now, I'm going to turn to Peggy and say, what comments and questions do we have to you and from you tonight?
Hi, Linda. First, I would like to say some thank yous to our super chats tonight. Okay. The list is long, so please bear with me. But thank you to Stephen Ely, Battle Cry, Richard Bunsbury, Moonbird, David Goldridge, Traveling Leon, Oh Wise Owl, Kiki Dombrowski, Too Far Gone from Earth, Marlena 66, Terry M. Hart, and hello out there to Dina. So thank you, everybody.
Those are the most creative names every week. I wonder, how did you guys come up with these names? Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I'm going to start off with a great question asked. Somebody wants to know, is the difference between being an abductee and a contactee memory loss?
No. The main fundamental difference and why the two names began to emerge as far back as I think the early 60s. Some people, like George Adamski, said that he met with blonde ETs, that they left the footprints from their strange shoes on the ground, that they came in silver discs that he allegedly took photographs of, and that he had some kind of communication, whether it was all telepathic or some combination, or what was he dealing with. I don't think any of us know for certain, but that was face-to-face, according to Adamski, in his yard, in his area, down below the Palomar Observatory. Now, a footnote that is my own personal journalism of having been in that area, having been introduced to a woman who had been a postmaster when George Adamski lived in a house on this curving road that I went up to the Palomar Observatory. And when I was there on a trip about 20 years ago, I got to meet her. And she told me how she would take her young son to deliver various mail to people who lived on this winding road going up to the Palomar Observatory. And that one day, there's a place, and she took me to it so I could see exactly. It would be like, here is a road that is coming up from below, and it hits this stretch, and up above is the observatory. So you're on this place like this, and it's going to turn, and it's going to continue going up the mountain. But right at this area where it's kind of flattens out, the road is a little bit wider. What is here? The observatory is there. The land goes like this. It comes like that, and then it rises. And it has quite a big kind of gulf in between where the road is and where the mountain continues up to the observatory. And she said that she and her son stopped right where she took me, and you could get out of the car, and we stood there, and I could imagine this. She said there were 3 approximately 30 to 50 foot wide silver lens-shaped craft hovering right there in that big gap. And she said her son looked up at her and said, "Mommy, that's what Mr. Adamski says he sees." So when we go back through history, that I think is a contactee case when you are face-to-face conscious, allegedly, with another intelligence. The abductee is, for the most part, has been defined in the missing time category. Bud Hopkins coined that phrase back with his book that came out the same time that I was working on Strange Harvest of Mutilations. In a way, we were sort of bookended. I was working on animal mutilations that also would lead to human abductions. He was working on human abductions out in Fire Island and places where he was going that involved missing time. He did the book Missing Time. I did the 90-minute TV special, A Strange Harvest. And we were, for 2 or 3 years there, we were at conferences where the question that was always being raised was the missing time of abductees who would remember waking up and being paralyzed, and then the next thing they know, the sun is shining and they're in their bed and they don't remember anything from when they woke up paralyzed and then the next morning. That would be missing time. And in the missing time cases, often it might be 2 weeks later or longer, but probably not less than 2 weeks has been my experience, that the people who have had missing time will have a very vivid dream. And the vividness of these dreams is like this kind of reality, but you're in a dream that you wake up in that vividness. And in those dreams, not all the time, but often, it is as if the intelligence that is interacting with us tries to explain, sometimes with metaphorical scenes, sometimes with numbers, sometimes with symbols, sometimes with playing out like a movie. Every once in a while, people will have a movie that goes through that is like the time of their missing time, and it flags for them that whatever this vivid dream is, it is about something trying to explain what happened. But even though in the missing time abduction cases, there can be these, we'll say later on, vivid dreams that might be the other intelligence trying to explain the inexplicable. I would say out of the 1,600 people approximately, 1,500, 1,600 people that I have interviewed, most of them in recordings on the record, either with or without their real names, that the fundamental issue is always there, that the people who have been examined by, who have been face to face, who have been put in front of machines as if to be taught what we would consider to be some kind of close association with a variety of these different types of intelligences and beings, as demonstrated in the Arowana story. When you ask them each time, whoever it is, what do you think the true agenda of the beings are that took you, harvested sperm, harvested eggs, harvested skin cells, showed you three-dimensional holograms of fire in the sky on Earth, the Earth flooded, meteorites crashing into the Earth? Why do you think they do this? What is the agenda? Most people don't really know. And when I say that, what I mean is, I think of anyone you know. We could have a gray being with black eyes, a shorter gray being with really slanted eyes, a tall, 8-foot tall blonde with cat eyes that are blue, or another white skin type like the black-haired who had gold cat eyes, or standing up lizards, standing up alligators. There are oranges, there are deep blues that are 3 or 4 feet tall. It's like this menagerie. And yet we humans don't really have a clear picture. And we don't have a clear picture on what is the true friendly ones, meaning they want us to survive. What are the neutral ones who don't really care? They come and go, they get what they want from the earth, metals, genetic material, doesn't matter. They do their thing and they don't really care what happens. And then another smaller group that allegedly is supposed to be hostile for reasons that are not clear, except if you go back through the alleged history of our planet, and if it is 270 million years, as the DIA guy told me, and I've shared here before, 270 million years was a long time for different non-human civilizations wanting to use our planet to argue with each other, fight with each other about territory. And it is maybe one of the discouraging truths that as above, so below, that throughout this universe, that advanced intelligence does not mean no war, no conflict, no power broking. That is something that I guess part of me is troubled by, because I have always hoped that advanced civilizations would be past war, past violence, but that may not be true. And that part of what we have to understand about everything, and Arrawana and I had long discussions in New Jersey 30 years ago, when it was so fresh to her then, about the fact that it was very clear to her that the tall, pearlescent, black-haired, tall male and the female in the tube that he said, "This is you," that they were in huge conflict with another extraterrestrial group who disliked what they considered to be the genetic manipulation of humans or humanoids on Earth. And that these advanced civilizations that could move portals, could move through time, could move dimensions, could move from universe to universe, that they would still fight. So in a funny, strange way, I guess we humans are a reflection of the universe that we are in. But at the same time, and Arowana feels this deeply, humans who have been abused because we've been kept so ignorant on purpose, I think, as she said, you see humanity at their best in a catastrophe, when a single human being will risk their life, die, saving others. We have compassion and we have empathy for each other. And that may be one of the most valuable commodities in this universe. And in the end, that could be what determines the recycling of souls. All right. Any other comments about what we've been talking about tonight, or questions?
Yeah, another viewer wants to know, why do you think that the aliens suppress the memories of those who have been abducted?
The whole idea of missing time, missing a whole segment of life in and around something where the human mind can remember right up to, I'll give you one that I've never forgotten. It was a woman, I talked with her about this. She was in a car. She had had interactions with UFOs, but she'd never been abducted before. And she was in a car, and she remembered that she was in a hurry. And she looked at her speedometer because there was a stretch of road where the police often monitored. And so she had all those thoughts in her mind as she looks at her speedometer to make sure that she wasn't going over 60 or 65 or whatever it was. And she said, Linda, the only thing I can remember is that the speedometer went out of focus for a second or two. And it turned out that this was a case, it was a Bud Hopkins case. And that it was having her say that the only strange thing she remembered, even though she had missing time, that's why she was one of his cases. The only thing she could remember was looking at, with her adrenaline running, at that speedometer and watching it go out of focus. Well, when the hypnotherapist took her back to that moment and the speedometer went out of focus, came this huge, gigantic abduction. So it may be that there's a whole bunch of things going on. I've been told, even though it doesn't make sense in a logical human way, I've been told that there really have been treaties with Eisenhower and maybe others. Yes, you can abduct a certain percentage of people. Yes, you can take a certain percentage of animals for your experiments and genetics and all of that, but you can't go over this percentage or we will fight them. I don't know. I mean, why would advanced ETs that can move point to point have huge bases underground on this planet, throughout the solar system, out into the Milky Way? Why would they even bother with doing something like a treaty with a country on Earth? I don't know, maybe. If so, it could be that part of the arrangement is you make sure that none of those people that you use remember anything about what you do. I mean, I'm just speculating. I don't know. The other thing is that in the cases where there's compassion, seems to be genuine compassion for us as a life form, that there are cases where the abductees have felt deep sadness being generated at them, or apology. We are apologizing to you. Please hear us. We are apologizing. It is necessary this be done. That is one of the repeated phrases in some of the abduction cases. It is necessary this be done, but you will not remember. Well, the human mind is an amazing, amazing thing. And when somebody who is skilled with hypnotherapy or works in brain studies, I have sat and watched some hypnosis sessions that were stunning in their detail, and that people can draw whole scenes. That was I'm not supposed to use their name, a case in An Alien Harvest where the man was a commercial artist. And I worked with Richard Sigismund, a good colleague of J. Allen Hynek, on that case. It took us 2 years to do hypnosis through the husband and wife. And the arrangement was neither one of them for 2 years would talk with the other about anything, whether they remembered or not. And he did these confidential illustrations under his hypnosis that she did not see for 2 years. And the detail and the extraordinary aspects of that case were such that when at one point Richard Sigismund had the husband deep, deep under, the wife's not there, where everything is always separated, and he was moving the husband piece by piece with a being in the craft in Colorado. And as they were moving piece by piece, which it's one of the hypnosis techniques to have people move through something that's happening. All of a sudden, the husband, who had been always quite articulate, he changed the way he looked physically, and his whole voice, it started to go very slow, very low. And I still remember him, they're taking my mind out. And the silence, and I looked over at Richard Sigismund doing the hypnosis, and he just raised his eyebrows, and we sat. And I think we sat for at least 10 full minutes on the clock. Nothing. Finally, Sigismund, using that, trying to move him forward, which he had tried, but it wouldn't work. Whatever was going on inside of the husband, with the complete and total silence, saying they had taken his mind out. When he began to talk, about 10 or 15 minutes later, was Sigismund actually becoming quite concerned. He wrote me a note, and he said, "Linda, I am concerned. I have never encountered anything quite like this before. I'm not sure what to do. I'm going to try to wait for a few more minutes." And after we reached 10 or 15 minutes, where his whole body had sort of crunched in while in the silence, he started to just kind of uncoil. It wasn't like a person just sitting up. I remember it was just like his body was uncoiling, and then raspy. It was not a clear voice, even though his voice was always very clear and articulate. It was very raspy. "They're putting my mind back." And after a while, everything came back to normal. Now, what's really interesting is that was the husband. The wife had her own parallel, separate sessions, which were amazing. Both of them, at the end of each of the years, when we ask him, for example, when you described your mind being taken out and then it being put back in, what happened? Did they add something? And he said yes. She said yes. Other abductees who have had something like that, everybody says yes. And the information, this is another one of the strange similarities case to case, that what gets added is usually in the same theme you don't understand. You don't understand that the universe is one universe of an infinite number, that there are many, many dimensions, that there are many, many timelines. You are focused in one. We can move in and out of these others. That's kind of a theme. And that another part of what comes across in some of these where the mind seems to have been stopped or something manipulated, it will have this kind of a flavor to it. That what the advanced intelligences are trying to do is to explore, investigate, interact with us, that they seem to know quite a bit about, but that we are some kind of a key to something they are trying to understand. It's almost as if you took all of the myriads of cases, and if you made it like a pointillismo painting where every case was a dot, and then you had to stand back 100 feet to see a gigantic canvas, that all of it, every single thing, good, bad, friendlies, neutrals, hostiles, that they all want to understand how life begins, evolves, and where it goes at the moment of death if it is a consciousness that dies. I think that we are dealing with some intelligences who know how to concoct artificial immortality by moving in and out of the speed of light. Something we can't do. So there may be consciousnesses out there that have a really long haul view of, let's say, our entire universe. They've been around for 18.6 billion years old, if this is, or 9, or there's so many arguments about how old this universe is. But let's say that you can concoct immortality, you can concoct no entropy, that you can concoct a kind of eternal life. But if you did, what would you lose in relationship to the evolution of life and living life, the way we interact with our matter world? Would it be the same, or would they be so detached from all things matter that their existence, in their existence, maybe they would crave to know what it is like to be in the matter world on a planet like this and have a child that you love to your core. I think of that because in so many of the abduction cases that I've dealt with, one of the fundamental themes is that the intelligence is interacting with us. Something has gone wrong. There's something wrong in their genetics. They are trying to use genetic manipulation to try to fix something, restore something, change timelines to change something. And where are they going for that genetic material? Our planet. And when you look at some of the quotes that come out of the exoplanet literature, and you see really seasoned astrophysicists say, you know, the more we look, the more extraordinary this planet Earth seems to be. We really could be in a lucky place on this planet. And with that Peggy, I think I have time for one more.
I will choose wisely. Linda, do you believe that the government is part of the abduction of people?
Well, I know if Bud Hopkins were here, he would say yes. In Copley Woods, his second book, Beyond Missing Time, he worked with a wonderful abductee, and I remember that was the first discussion that I ever had where the idea that our government would have special ops missions to go and take people that they knew that the ETs were interested in and abducting. So it would be us abducting people who were being abducted by non-humans in order to use sodium pentothal and chemicals to have Q&A interviews with real Homo sapiens, but in a confined, controlled military operation, trying to get information about ETs. I mean, that was sort of the theme in Bud Hopkins' second book, that was going on in parallel, not explaining away abductions at all, but just as I said, that there was some kind of a special ops effort by the Department of Defense to try to understand what we were dealing with. I don't know. I have sat and listened to several people who have said that they became aware that the military had taken them. One was Jim Sparks. Jim Sparks was an abductee by. There was a mix. He had interactions with gray beings who taught him on a computer symbols and letters. He had very tall, 8-9 foot tall reptilian types, one of which put a glowing hologram of a human face over its sort of alligator-ish head. And Jim said it actually made him laugh, that he was terrified, but when he saw this human face, that they didn't try to pretend that it wasn't a hologram. And it made him laugh, and it made him feel better. But they were still 9 foot tall, standing up alligators, with one wearing a holographic three-dimensional face, human face. And this whole issue that he was, in the beginning, he was being interacted with for real, I think, by the Eben types, the gray-skinned, pear-shaped headed. And they stress with Jim Sparks that they had been involved with his life and a few other lives over many cycles in the human container. That the Jim Sparks container, they knew all about going back to other lives in Rome and France, and that's part of the Jim Sparks story, that reincarnation was part of the whole interaction with ETs. And then there was an experience, and he drew what he saw, and he thinks it was a place like S4, Area 51, Edwards Air Force Base, someplace like that. And he ended up in a hangar, and he still did not know what had happened to him. And in the other cases, it's not really clear to people exactly what has happened. So it could be that there was a period of time, maybe in the 80s or 70s to the 80s, where our government was desperate to get a handle on or a reality check on what was happening. But today, as we are in 2020 and going forward, hoping that we will finally be told the truth with some respect, that we are a fellow life form to the Pentagon and to all the other countries of the world, that we who are not in power, who are not in control of armies, we still should receive the respect of being told the truth, that we're not alone in this universe. And right now, if there is a non-human intelligence who knows that this planet is undergoing the COVID-19 coronavirus, and it has powerful days to go, this could be really bad, like Dr. Osterholm said. If there are intelligences who understand the genetics and how everything works on this planet, wouldn't it be great if they would finally just act and help us in the public way? Others argue they can't do that because then it weakens us as a species, and then we're going to depend on ETs and ask them to do everything for us, and we'll never grow up. I understand both sides. But I keep hoping that with that headline, we're not alone in this universe, that we would finally have a public treaty, a public handshake, that planet Earth would not be alone, and that those who are friendly and care about us would truly help us in the public. So, you guys, keep washing your hands all the time. It can cut down the possibility of getting this damn thing by 30%. Don't go into crowds. Don't go onto cruise ships. Don't go into planes for a while. And let's meet back here on every Wednesday night. I'm going to keep trying to bring you some of the most interesting letters, of which this tonight, having Arowana get in touch with me after all these years, and having her have that insight that the light, the tube, at the moment of death, it's like they said, you're still alive. I love you guys.